crafty friends. This is Gloria Plunkett with designsbygloria.com, here to share with you how to create this fun foxy card. Isn't that adorable? I don't know if you can see the glimmer and stuff I have on this card. Anyway, let me show you real quickly how to create this adorable card. You're going to take a piece of thick Whisper White cardstock and you're going to cut it at 4 1/4 by 10. Notice by 10, not by 11. And we're going to score in half at 5 inches. You're going to fold that and put it aside. You're going to bring in another piece of thick Whisper White cardstock to create your fox face template. So what I did is I cut this at 4 1/4 by 4 3/4. I used the layering circles framelits, and I picked the second to the largest of the circles without the scallops to use on this face. So I used a piece of scrap Whisper White cardstock. I placed my cardstock on my grid paper here, and I made sure that I centered my cardstock as best I could on the grids. Then I took my layering circles, I placed it at the center. Let me move this to the center. At the center of the grid paper right here. Then using my pencil, I drew a circle here. And then if you can see, I've only gone up about 1/4 inch here on the grid. So I moved this over, placed this so that it coordinated right with the tip of that side, ensuring that was only one grid up from the top of this so it would coordinate with this. Then I drew the other half circle. I brought in my Big Shot. I'll show you, it's already done, but maybe a visual person like me, I can show you real quickly. So I placed my cardstock right where it was up, where I had drew the pencil line. I placed my die right at that pleat. I put my cutting plate up and ran it through the Big Shot. Came off. I took this off and did the exact same thing on the other side, and I ran it through the Big Shot. And that creates my template for my fox face, because I know I'm going to be making more of these because I think they're so adorable. So anyway, that created my face template. So now I've taken a piece of Cajun Craze cardstock, again measuring at 4 1/4 by 3 3/4, and I placed my template on there, brought it down to the tip there. Sorry if I was out of line here. Then I just took my pencil and made 2 lines. Okay, so once you got your template made, you're good to go for any future fox cards or even unicorn cards. So again, I would place my dies and cut that little face out to create this little template here. Okay, so now I'm going to bring back my cardstock, and before I glue this on here, I took my Stampin' Right chalk marker. And by the way, I'm going to have all the products listed for you at the bottom of this video, so you don't have to write measurements or anything down. It'll all be there for you. Excuse me. I took my marker and I just made little wispy lines. I didn't make them perfectly aligned, so they would just kind of look like hair, just kind of here and there. Some I made shorter, some I made longer. And then once I was done with that, it was time to stamp my flowers that I have on this fox. I used Blushing Bride cardstock with Blushing Bride ink, and I used the Pop of Petals stamp set, and I used this particular stamp right here for the flowers. This time I stamped them in Flirty Flamingo on Blushing Bride cardstock. You can see that gives the flowers a little bit more pop. I thought that would be a little bit prettier than the subtle colors I have right now. I stamped them, and then we do have a 4-petal punch that works perfectly with these images from the Pop of Petals stamp set. But I wanted my my flowers should be a little bit smaller, and so I went in and cut right at that line on all 4 petals. I took my Flirty Flamingo ink after I had stamped these, and I sponged all the edge of the flowers. So once I had, using my sponge dauber, once I had done that, then I brought in my bone folder, and I held, I like to hold my anything I'm going to bone fold tight or taut right here, and then I just kind of gave them a little bend. And I do it ever so gently. You really don't need to cram it, just barely give it a little bend, and it does that. Then I took the petals and kind of gave them a little push towards the center to create a little bit of dimension. Okay. To create the leaves on this, I used my leaf punch. I also used this pretty leaf from the Pop of Petals stamp set. I punched out my leaf, and I didn't care about having that stem because I'm going to cut them all off about right there. So what I did was I just simply came in here with the leaf stamp set, Pear Pizzazz ink, inked it up, and then on each particular leaf I went ahead and stamped and brought it up. And I think this gives these little leaves some pretty cool dimension. Easy as that. Then I took my paper snips and I just came in here and cut off the little stems because I didn't need them. So I did that on 2 different punched out leaves. Again, that's Pear Pizzazz Classic Ink on Pear Pizzazz cardstock. Okay. The next thing is these adorable little ears. And that's the reason I had you cut the cardstock to 4 1/4 by 10, because I wanted to hang these over a 1/2 inch to give the card a little bit more dimension. So I needed the card a little shorter so that I could still slip it into a regular A2 envelope. So to create the ears, I pulled out my Nature's Root Framelits, and I use this leaf framelit and this leaf framelit. Now let me just tell you one thing. Stampin' Up! Doesn't recommend we do this, so you're going to do this at your own risk. It works for me. I've never had a problem with it. I'm not afraid to do it, but it's up to you. You could also hand cut that. It wouldn't be very hard to do. I'll quickly show you how I did this. I pulled in a piece of Cajun Craze cardstock. I placed my die, and I didn't want the whole leaf, probably more like 3/4 of it. Then I placed the small leaf on the inside. I pushed it down as far as it would go, centering the tips on both. Place my cutting pad on top. Ran it to the big shot. That gave me those little pieces there. So now I have what I'm calling the outer ear of the fox. I took my snips and I just trimmed it up so it looked a little bit cleaner. That made the outer piece. You're not going to use this whole piece, probably only about there, but I just left the extensions on there. Then I took another full leaf of the large one and cut a piece of that. Once I was done with that, I brought my craft ink, sponge dauber, and I inked up the center of what I'm going to call the ear. And I did that on both. You know, foxes have little white inside of their ear. All right, so that creates our little ears for the fox. I took my sponge dauber, my Cajun Craze ink, and I sponged on the outer edges and the inner edges of the layer for the ears to kind of give it a little bit extra dimension. All right, now assembling the card, I brought back in my little face that we had previously cut and placed a little hair marks on. I'm going to bring in my Tombow. I've got it on this container because it has a finer tip than the Tombow does. And it works really good on these little fine pieces. So I'm going to take it, just add a few little dots. And I'm going to add it to my ear to create a little dimension. Do it to this one as well. I only use a few little dots. This Tombow sticks really well, and I don't need a big old gob of it. And that little container actually helps me keep my glue right where I want it. Okay. Now we're going to stick the ears down. And as you can see on this one, I left a little bit of a gap there. I wanted to make sure I had room for my leaves and my flowers on the ears. You remember when you're gluing it to only adhere Tombow to the bottom of the ear, because you're going to leave about ½ an inch sticking out. So let me just point where ½ an inch is right there. 2 blocks on my grid paper. So I know not to go further up than those 2 blocks on my grid paper. I'm just going to trim this down a little bit, but I don't really need to. Okay. Trimmed off that. Bring in a little spot of glue. And I add my next ear on here. And there you go. You have the cutest little ears. You can turn them out a little bit for a little bit more cuteness. We're going to adhere this to the white panel, but let me finish getting through this here. Now I'm going to bring back in my petals. I'm going to put a little bit of Tombow down the center. I'm going to center my first one. I want to leave enough room to tuck a leaf in there. So I'm putting that down there. A little bit of Tombow. Another petal about there. You can certainly use any flower that you have in your stash. You don't have to use these. Just whatever works for you. Now I'm going to bring my little leaves, little Tombow, and I'm just going to stick them in different places. So do or add them at your, however works for you, what you like best. I know we all have different ideas on how we like our projects to look. I don't know if I want green sticking out of his ears. So I'm going to bring this one down here. Gonna add another one, say over here, and maybe one more on this side here. All right. Next, I brought in my pearls. I'm using my pickup tool. I used the largest of the pearls and added it to the centers of my flower. By the way, this is the 6th time I'm working on this video. My phone kept cutting me off. I don't know what the heck is going on. It's very aggravating. Alrighty, As you can see, we got the pearls on. Now we're going to add a few sequins here and there. And what I do is I will just kind of pick where I want my sequins. I think I want one there. I think I want one there. Maybe another one here. One kind of crazy out here by itself. Maybe one on my petal. One on this petal. Okay. Just come in here, pick up our sequins using our pickup tool. This is an awesome tool. I love this one. Love it, love it, love it. So I'm going to pick up a little one, put that over here. And let's see, a nice bright orange. Put that right here. This makes it so easy where you don't have to dig your fingers in there trying to figure out how you're going to get it up and how you're going to get it out. And oh, I love it. Best tool. I think it's one of the best tools we have on Stampin' Up website right now. No, I think I'm going to put that one over here. And maybe a little green one. You're probably going, hurry up, hurry up. All right, we'll put that one there. Well, dang, that looks like the same one. Oh, well. Okay, so you got that done. The next thing is I needed a little nose. I was going to use a little heart. And I looked at different heart shapes that I have in my collection. And I'm using the Pretty Park Framelit dies, and I use this little heart right here. Punch it out of black cardstock. And I'm going to stick that right there. Okay? So that pretty much is the fur of my fox. Next thing I did is I punched out a 1 1/4 inch circle from my circle punch. I placed my fur right at the top of my card. Then I took my circle, held it there in place. I brought in my pencil again, and I drew a half moon. Did one on this one, and see how I pushed it right up against the fur? I did the same thing on this side, so they would be at an equal distance. So I just did half circle. Then, using my black Stampin' Right marker on the brush tip end, I went ahead and went over the line because I wanted it to be a little bit thicker, and then just made 5 little lashes on there. Now, we're ready to add the cardstock to our base. I'm just going to line it up here. I like tumble because I got a few seconds to get it just right on my card. Oop, that's coming off. All right, let me add a little bit more glue on this one. I don't want it there, I want it there. See what I mean with this pickup tool? I don't have to go chasing the daggum sequence anywhere. Now let's go ahead and add, and you notice I didn't use any dimensionals. I just glued everything straight down. I didn't want to add a whole lot of bulk to my card because I knew it'd have a lot of pieces. And there you go. Last thing I did was I brought in my Wink of Stella, and I added some to her nose. I added some, I probably should have done this before I put the pearls down, but I added some to the outside, the inner little flower that we have there. So I just wanted to make sure I got a little bit of there. And then, squeeze this, I added some to the inside of the ear. I didn't want to add any on the outside, just on the inside, which we would call the fur. And there you have it, my friends. A cute little fox card. Now, it's not the easiest thing. I did want to let you know that I have an upcoming card class that I'm going to be posting on my site.